Welcome everybody. My name's Scott. Great to be here today. Good morning, Stephen. How are you today?
Very well, thank you, Scott. Good to be here.
I understand that we're going to be looking at some filters and the filter panel today. Could you tell me a little bit more about filters?
I'll be delighted to, Scott. Yeah, the filter panel on the layout ribbon. So we have a number of ribbons across the top, and we're going to be looking at the filter ribbon. As always, before we start, we look at setting our perspective. Now, Scott, I've just been working on some wireframe models, and my perspective is set to that, but I'm going to return to our UML perspective, and I'm going to choose all UML there. The interface changes and focuses in then on UML. And let's have a look at opening up some diagrams. So we're using our navigation cells here. Let's open up some structural diagrams. We'll click on this one and come down to the UML structural diagrams. Let's open up the deployment diagram, and you can see that diagram there in the diagram canvas. And we'll tuck away our toolbox for the moment. Scott, we can use the little chevron there, hide that away, and we've got our deployment diagram nicely visible. The other thing we're going to do is...
How did you make the diagram shrink? How did you make the diagram shrink?
I'm holding the control key down and using my mouse wheel. So a number of different options with that. I can use the pan and zoom window as well. So, lots of different options, and I can say, fit to page or fit to view if I want. So that's the diagram there. Let's also open up the class diagram. So we can navigate to that through the browser, and let's open up that one as well. So we've got two diagrams open. You can see they're visible there as tabs on the main application window. So let's have a look at filters. So there are a number of different filters, and they're really quite extensive. So we're going to look at, at the moment we've got filtering off. So we look at this panel here, there are three little edits, or a drop down and a couple of little edits. We're going to look at relationships. So we'll click on relationships, and we'll go back to our class model. And when we do that, Scott, we see the elements that are connected actually by these connectors in the class model. So that's a kind of a useful thing. I can do the same thing in here, and I get the elements that are connected to the payment server. So that's a useful one, but let's have a look at some more as we go along. The hierarchy one is an interesting one. So what this one is doing is the hierarchy is saying, look, there are elements that are nested under each other in the project browser as part of the repository. So let's click on something in here, and nothing happens there. That's just that element. But let's click on this one here, and you notice that there are nested elements here. We've got a database cluster and an execution environment being a SQL server, and then we have a transaction database underneath that, and a similar thing for the parking meter one. Let's have a look at this in the project browser. I'm using the find command there to find it in the project browser, and you can see here that these elements are nested underneath the database cluster. So it's a very powerful thing to do on the diagrams, just to show me immediately that those things are nested underneath. Let's have a look at the same thing on this one here. Now you look here, you see the parking meter. The only other element that's completely visible is the payment reader. Let's do the same thing with the system. Let's have a look in the project browser and see what's happening and why this one's coming up. And you'll see that the parking meter, the class parking meter, has got the payment reader nested underneath it.
So that hierarchy wasn't really visible from the diagram itself. So you're getting more information than you would just by looking at the diagram.
Yeah, well picked up, Scott. In the deployment case, yes, it is. You can see that it's there, but in the class diagram, no, it's not. Let's do something else and say, look, our parking meter, apart from having the payment reader on it, the display is an integral part of the payment reader. So let's drag that element and drag that underneath the parking meter. So what we do is drag it in the project browser and drop it on there. And you can see the magic is applied instantly. We can see, as you said, I click on the parking meter and I know that that's a nested one. If I click on this one, then you can see that those two things are there. Let's move on in this because we've got a lot to cover. And I can say filters off. That returns us to the diagrams without any filters applied. We've got name and alias. So let's have a look at a name here, and let's put in meter, right? So that's the only element that has the word meter in there. Now imagine this was a large diagram, Scott, and you had lots of things around. You'd find that you'd be able to find the things with meter in it. Let's have a look at our deployment model. And again, you can see here that there are a number of elements that have meter in their name. We've got the application server, meter manager, we've got the parking meter database, and we've got the meter management system and the meter management deployment spec.
So, Stephen, is it possible to do a search if you only know the first couple of letters of an element? So yeah. I might know a little bit, but not the whole lot.
Great question, Scott. Let's do that with the with a different example. Let's do it with the author here, and we'll change meter out of there, and let's say equal to, and I'll put in an author of Stephen Maguire, myself. Notice that nothing's coming up until I complete the name, and now the elements that I have actually authored are coming up in the model. So to answer your question, Scott, if I'll use this drop down here, I'll just get rid of Stephen Maguire there, and I'll just go contains. Instead of going equal to, I'll put contains there, and I'll start typing with Stephen. And you can see that the minute that I start typing, there are no other authors that have got those first three letters. And if I choose another author, I know Jenny's been doing some work on this, so immediately those ones pop up, which are the elements that Jenny has been working on. So the same with the class model. You can see that that's going to just apply to that, and I can just type my name in there, and suddenly those ones change as well. So lots of possibilities there. Let's have a look at another one, Scott, and this time we'll look at filtering on. Let's look at phase. It's an interesting one, and let's remove that for the moment. And let's look at a phase and say that we were working on an agile project, and I'll put it onto equal to, actually, this one, and we're looking at what's going on in sprint 1. So just typing sprint 1 in there, equal to, I find the elements that are the important elements that are going to be in this first iteration of sprint 1. So really useful. I don't have to create a new diagram. I don't have to kind of write a detailed document explaining what's in it. The system takes care of it. I can do the same thing in here, and you can see sprint 1. These are the elements that are going to be part of sprint 1. So the parking meter, the gateway, the meter manager, and this SQL Server execution environment and database. So
what if I wanted to look at everything apart from sprint 1? So if I wanted to see sprint 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, but not sprint 1, is that possible?
That's a great question, Scott. And I think you've been working with the product for a little while. Maybe I'll just set that as a question for you, because it is an interesting one.
Well, I saw below from the drop down there was a not equal to. So perhaps if we say not equal to sprint 1. Let's see what that does.
Scott, I'm very pleased to see that you're starting to get a grip on this application. That's exactly what we would use, and that's an incredibly powerful thing, because there might be someone who wants to see, like you said, everything else. So looking at those options in the filter panel, we've got a number of different things there. Like we've got one of, we've got not equals, we've got equal to, and we can look at some of those other ones, but they're the main ones: contains, equal to, not equal to, and one of would allow us to, for example, if we had a status and we said, we wanted to say we want approved and also proposed, and so we could put both of those ones in. So let's just have a very quick look at that, at a status type of one, and say, look, it contains sprint 1. Let's say it's one of, and we'll put in approved there, and you can see those ones. Put a comma in there and put in proposed as well. Those ones come up. So, I can turn the filtering off, Scott, and get back to our diagram. That's a very quick look at that. Just one other remark I should make. We did an earlier video on a much kind of fuller feature, which is our filters and layers. And so we have a window that's dedicated to to filters down here, and we can use that window as well to do particular filtering as well, which in some more advanced filtering there. But our focus today was on the layout ribbon and the filters panel. So
thanks, Stephen. That's great. It makes it really easy to find elements. It makes it really easy, especially I can imagine if you had a large diagram with 1,000 elements, trying to scan through them manually would be really hard, but you can just flick on a filter and find one easily.
Yeah, that's right, Scott. And with big diagrams like, database diagrams or, complex solution architectures, an incredibly useful feature and good for presenting things to an audience, like in a stand-up meeting. You can project this onto a wall and, just simply click on things and walk through it.
So you could, for example, have it projected and say, all right, now we're going to look at all the elements created by Stephen Maguire, and now we'll have a look at the elements created by Scott. That's fantastic. Well, I'd like to thank you very much for presenting and showing me this information about filters. I'd like to encourage everyone watching to subscribe to the Sparx Systems YouTube channel. Make sure you click the like. Feel free to comment on any of the videos that you see, and if you have any questions, feel free to add them. So like, comment, and subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you again in future videos. Thanks for your time, Stephen. Great to learn all about filters today.
Thanks, Scott.